Hi, I'm Ruben Taris, and I was given the assignment to convince Spanish students to come to the Netherlands for their internship, or at least remind them why we are such a great country. I've done research in the differences between the Netherlands and Spain, but first, the question has to be asked, why the Netherlands? I'm not going to bore you with any of this or this or this. You are here because you want to know why we are a great country for business. Well, for instance, we have put some great businesses out there. For example, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, I can go on and on. But let's be fair. Your country looks like this. Mm, Unfortunately, our country most of the time looks like this. So, besides the weather, what are the most important differences between the Dutch culture and the Spanish one? Well, like I said, I've done research. I have interviewed a Dutch businessman as well as a Spanish businessman, and on top of that, I have done the necessary desk research. I've taken an interest in the model of Hofstede, which looks at cultures in 7 different ways, of which I'm going to point out the most important ones in this video. So, what do you need to know before you come to the Netherlands? Well, it turns out formalities differ in each country. In Spain, you may be used to introducing yourself to a woman with 2 kisses, one on each cheek, but the Dutch are much more formal. In the Netherlands, you always introduce yourself by giving someone a handshake and, of course, saying your name. Furthermore, everyone you meet on the business floor you address with their last name, unless, of course, you are told not to. Another big difference is punctuality. You must always be on time. In every culture, in every country, you must always be on time everywhere. In every culture, it is appreciated when you are somewhere on time, but in the Netherlands, it is of very high essence. Of course, being late sometimes is inevitable, but when you do come in late to a class or a meeting or an appointment, you must have a good excuse. Take a bus or a train earlier in the morning. It may seem like much of an effort, but your punctuality will be rewarded in the long run. So, like I said, I did research. As it turns out, the Dutch culture is one of the most feminine cultures in the world. But what does that mean? It does not mean that we have an abnormal amount of women in this country. It means we, as a society, give a lot of priority to care and quality of life. So, how does that translate to your daily routine? Well, where people from other countries sometimes tend to scream at each other, fight, argue, the Dutch at all times strive to a consensus. Uh, they talk things over. They strive to a consensus where both parties end up happy. So when you come here, prepare yourself for a lot of long discussions. Another difference between the Spanish and the Dutch culture is their uncertainty avoidance, which is a term that you may not know already, so let me explain. Uncertainty avoidance defines how much someone is willing to take a risk in their career. As it turns out, the Spanish, at least most Spanish people, like to have a job with much certainty. The Dutch are willing to take a leap of faith. They are inventive and innovative. So if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, this really is your place to be. The fifth big difference between Spain and the Netherlands is the fact that the Dutch are very much oriented on the long term. Many decisions are made for the future. Investing more now will pay out more later. Remember that if you will work for a business in the Netherlands, dealing rationally is fine, but your instinct is not always prepared for the future. Many international Dutch businesses became what they are today because of a perspective and a lot of perseverance. Now let's talk about power distance. What is power distance? Power distance describes how much distance there is between an employer and an employee. For example, you might be used to addressing your current boss as Mr. Jones, but in the Netherlands we would say John. In the Netherlands, it is common for employees to address their boss with their first name. In Spain, there is more distance between a boss and an employee. In the Netherlands, people often have a first name understanding with their boss or teacher. I have a lot of first name basis relationship with my teachers. But watch out, never assume that you can address them by their first name. You always have to ask, or they have to point out that they don't mind being called by their first name. As you may have already noticed, there are no gigantic differences between our cultures. Uh, the end of the day, we're both European, Western European cultures. But if you want to know more about ours, I really advise you to come visit us and see for yourself. If you would like to know more about the differences in theory, you should really look up the model of Hofstede. But for now, I would just like to thank you for listening. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you one time in Holland.